Hey everybody, welcome to part 3. Good morning of a 3-part series with Gabe Karp, partner at Detroit Venture Partners and author of Don't Get Mad at Penguins and Other Ways to Detox the Conflict in Your Life and Business. Gabe, it's been a ton of fun talking with you all week and fun talking about your book. But, one thing I haven't asked you, we've talked all about conflict and this and the other is, what the name of your book actually means and why it's about penguins. I know it's not about penguins, but the reference of penguins.
Right.
So tell me more. Yeah.
Sure. Well, one answer is read the book and find out. But the other is this, is that I'd say, like, to not sound preachy, although it sounds preachy, is that, like, between expectation and reality is a space filled with suffering and conflict. And the wider that space becomes, the greater our suffering is. So the penguin analogy is really...
So say that again, because I think if somebody hears that, they're going to be like, well, what is that? Say that again so they can...
So between expectation and reality is a space filled with suffering and conflict. And the wider that space is, the greater our suffering is. So when we expect things that are different from reality, and there's a gap there, that's where we suffer. And I would say this, the penguin analogy is really a lesson in acceptance. And so to kind of bring it down to just normal human interaction, we should accept people's limitations and not expect them to do things that they're not capable of, even though, like, we may really, really want them to. And the challenge with that is that sometimes it's hard to see people's limitations, especially when, like, everything else we know about them suggests that they're not limited. So take a penguin, for example.
Yeah.
What do you mean a penguin can't fly? It's a bird. It's got wings. It's got feathers. And birds with wings and feathers can fly.
Right.
Except that penguins can't. Like, it's simply beyond their ability. And we could choose to get mad at that, or we can accept it. So if you think about, like, when we may find ourselves dealing with someone who continually falls short of our expectations. Maybe it's someone who's, like, always late, no matter how important it is to us that they be on time. Yet we continue to expect that on this occasion, they won't be late. Or maybe, you have one of those friends who's always injecting, like, a little bit of negativity, giving you a little personal jab every time you got some good news to share. Yet we hope that the next time we have something to celebrate, he'll be happy for us. And that's the expectation. But if we think about it, we know the reality is something different. And that space in there, that's where we suffer. And when I say suffer, that's where we get frustrated. That's where we get mad. And so I would say that, the reality is oftentimes the other person is not capable of acting in the way that we want. And if we do have one of those friends who never celebrates our good news with us, the reality is that he's not capable of feeling happiness for himself, let alone us. It's got nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
So the next time he gets that way, when you have some good news to share, like, don't get mad at him. Don't take it personally. It's not his fault. He's not capable of being happy for us. It's simply beyond his ability. And getting mad at him for that is like getting mad at a penguin because it can't fly.
Yeah.
So long explanation, but
I love that. No, I don't think it was long at all. I think it was great. And I love the way that you framed it. So let's talk about, the person who hears this. Now, what's the road to acceptance, right? What's the road to, right? Conceptually, I get it. I love what you're talking about. But as I look to apply it in life, personal life is different than business life. And so,
I'm going to disagree with that. I no longer see a difference between business life and personal life. Like, to me, when you talk about conflict and like business goes better when you have better relationships, when you're more efficient with your time, when you're more productive, when you grow. And it's the same thing with a personal relationship, a friendship, dealing with a parent, dealing with a sibling, dealing with a child.
I agree with that. I just want to share this thought because to me, I see where I see the difference is in a friend, I can accept something and know what their limitations is. In business, if people aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and you realize you hire the wrong person for a role, and you have higher expectations because of the role, then you need to move that person to a new seat, or maybe they're not a fit for the company anymore.
Yes.
Right? I can accept a friend and their limitations and say, okay, I'm in your example, I'm not going to wait for that person to say congratulations, but that's where I can slot them as a friend. But in business, I do have to make different moves.
You do. And I think when you've hired someone who's no longer a good fit for the role, it's important to understand what their limitations are. And then when you do, and you've accepted those limitations, you're no longer going to get frustrated at them for not doing the things that you're expecting them to do, because you no longer expect them to do it because you realize they can't. So you can make the decision. But what about someone that you really can't control? Let's say it's your boss or a client, like a really important client, or an investor in your company, where you can't just jettison that relationship out. It'll have great implications. You're much better served recognizing that this person has a limitation, instead of thinking that they're choosing to behave in a way that you don't want. Realizing it's beyond their ability. And I would say this: here's the switch that I think helps a lot of people when they flip it. Because the reality is, like, when people fall short of expectations, we can choose how we want to react.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, and I've had people say to me, well, wait a second, you can't, like, I can't control my emotional reactions because they're involuntary. But the truth is, you absolutely can choose. That doesn't mean you can choose to never feel that initial flash of anger, fear, or anxiety. But the lifespan of that instinctive response is measured in seconds, not hours or days. And what happens next? Entirely within our control. If we allow our instinctive response to continue, then our attention will narrow. Maybe our breathing and heart rate even accelerate, and we focus on how the other person is always doing this or never doing that, or like always making us feel angry or fearful. And we just go with the emotion and let it drive our response. That's a choice. We could choose to not go with the emotion. We could choose to shift our focus away from that instinctive response. And the really cool thing is, once we develop the skill set to disrupt our instinctive responses, then we gain power to control our emotions, not allow our emotions to control us.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about. It's almost creating like a formula for yourself when you're in a situation that you can fall back on. You know, when you watch live programming, like a show or whatever, they'll there's a 3-second delay, right, in case something happens where they need to not put it on television. And so I think sometimes, you know, for me, one of the things I always do, because I have caught myself in this in the past, is give myself 3 seconds to just literally take breaths or count to 3, so I don't come across, you know, in a way that I don't want to. So I think what you're saying is great, because we may not like that we can choose, right? But we can choose.
Yeah, I mean, how about yes, said perfectly. And I would even add to that, when we choose to not take control and accountability for the way we feel ourselves, we're actually voluntarily handing control of our emotional state over to someone else,
right?
Who's probably going to be pretty irresponsible with that power.
Right. You know, it's funny as you're talking, I'm thinking, you know, so there's certain people, more so in business, where, you know, especially in my younger days, I remember just not liking someone, or as that person that, you know, would say something and it would trigger me, but I would look around and I would say, that's interesting, because, you know, this is probably from just years and years of therapy. I would say, what that person says triggers me, but doesn't seem to trigger many other people. So how are they hearing what I'm hearing? Because, and I try to kind of change, like, kind of in real time, almost my perspective of that person. It just helped me try to not take it personally and kind of go back into my own baggage to say, okay, why is it triggering? Why is that triggering me? Because it must be something in me if it's not triggering everybody else the same way. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've shared is, like, if you are dealing with someone who's speaking to you in a way that's triggering you, imagine that person were a 4-year-old child saying and talking in exactly the same way. Would you get mad? Would you feel threatened? No, you'd recognize that this is a 4-year-old child who hasn't developed that control over their emotions. And the reality is, like, none of us is perfect, and we're all like really evolved in some areas and lesser evolved in others. And you just may be bumping up against someone else's less evolved areas.
Right. But I think you said something earlier. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you said something earlier that I'm just trying to recall it for 1 second. You were saying, I just lost it. It was in my head. But you were saying we have to accept them for their lack of expectations, even though we see pieces of what they could be in something in other places. I can't remember exactly how you put it, but you think, well, if that person can do this over there, why can't they just do it over here? So talk about that, because I think that gets really confusing.
Yeah. So I'll give you the example I was talking about earlier, where like someone always injects a little negativity. That's actually a true story that a good friend of mine shared with me about his business partner. So there was these two guys, great business. They get along. They've known each other for decades, spend more time with each other than they spend with anyone else. And overall, it's a great relationship. But he like confided in me one day, my business partner, like, I did this charitable thing and I was recognized for it. And when I shared it with him, he was negative. Or when I got engaged, like I was so happy, and he just like down on it. And he basically said that it was making him, it was becoming an issue.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, you're getting mad at penguins, you can't fly. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, you think that he's like making the choice to be happy for you because I knew that guy through him really well. And I'm like, I know him. Like, that guy ain't not wired for happiness, but he does look like it. Like, he's smart, he's funny, he's compassionate, and smart, funny, compassionate people. And he was witty too. Like, they usually also are able to be really happy for themselves and others. So he looks like a fully formed human being,
right,
with that happiness gene. But I happen to know he didn't have it. And it's frustrating because it looks like he does, and it's reasonable to assume that he does, but that expectation is not the reality.
Yeah, that's great. That's that's a very that's a big thing. Yeah, because I sometimes will question. I'm like, God, if that person can be that there, why can't they be it here? But now I'm going to look at it and just say, all right, I'm not going to get mad at that penguin.
Yeah, one funny thing someone once told me, because I've used the penguin analogy before. This person's penguin was like a very aggressive, abrasive person that they had a long relationship with, and the feedback came to me later on. They said, I got to tell you, like, that guy was yelling at me a couple weeks ago, and all I could picture was a cute little penguin, and it just completely disarmed the whole. It just reframed everything. Yeah. Which is a good advantage, to look at that. Yeah. The reality is, by the way, is that sometimes the other person's limitation is a really big deal and is more of a limit. I wouldn't view it as a limitation on the person, but the limitation on a relationship that you're capable of having with this person. Yeah. And that way it's not even personal to them. It's just like, all right, I accept, I can't have as meaningful a relationship with this person, not because this person doesn't like me and is choosing not to, but they've got issues with how they relate to other people. Yeah, it's great. Wow, this was great. This was a great, way to end the week of our 3-part series. Gabe, tell everybody where they can buy Don't Get Mad at Penguins and Other Ways to Detox the Conflict in Your Life and Business, and where they can connect with you. Yeah. Great. Book looks great. Book looks great. It's a great book. Yeah. Don't Get Mad at Penguins. Anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart. It's all, go online, you'll find it. It's even been translated into some languages. I can't even tell what those languages are. Amazing. Well, congratulations on the success of your book. Congratulations on just, the journey of writing it. Writing a book is a great journey. We'll have you on again to talk about that. But congrats and thanks. And thanks for all your time. I appreciate it. Think Community,
Check out the book anywhere books are sold. Don't Get Mad at Penguins. Other ways and other ways to detox the conflict in your life and business. Gabe, thanks, man. All the best with everything.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks,
It's been
John.
great. Yep.
All right.